There's a moment, not loud, not public, when something shifts inside you. It might follow a breakdown, a burnout, or an existential crisis. Or maybe it arrives after an intense period of introspection, a retreat, a powerful insight, or a long stare at the ceiling that lasted a week too long. You feel it. Life tilts. The noise that used to drive you, ambition, validation, purpose, goes quiet. Not gone in an instant, but faded, like someone turned the volume down on everything and forgot to turn it back up. At first, this feels profound, liberating. You think you've accessed a deeper truth, and maybe you have. But then, nothing. No fire, no urgency, no drive. You wake up into stillness. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that makes you wonder, why don't I care anymore? You're not depressed. You're not even sad. You're just blank. And here's the strange truth that psychology rarely talks about, yet Carl Jung hinted at more than a century ago. What you're experiencing might be the most crucial and underexplored stage of psychological transformation. This isn't failure. It's not dysfunctional. It's a pause before a new identity emerges, a kind of inner psychological death. And if you understand what's happening, if you learn to see it clearly, you'll realize that what feels like the end is actually a profound and necessary beginning. Welcome to the liminal space, the psychological in-between that most people fear, avoid, or mislabel. In this video, we're not going to talk about awakening as a mystical idea or a spiritual cliché. We're going to explore what actually happens to your psyche, what breaks down, what goes silent, and why that silence is not a problem, but a portal. Let's begin. Most people live their lives with a particular kind of psychological fuel. This fuel comes from the ego, the part of your psyche that says, I am this, and then builds an entire story around it. This story includes your job, your goals, your relationships, your status, your reputation, your schedule, your beliefs, and your dreams. Carl Jung called this layer of the self the persona. It's the mask we wear to navigate social life. Necessary, but not the whole picture. Now, here's the thing about the persona. It works brilliantly until it doesn't. At some point, especially for highly self-aware people, thinkers, creatives, empaths, seekers, the persona starts to crack. The story you've been telling about who you are and why you're doing what you're doing starts to feel hollow. You meet your goals and feel nothing. You check the boxes and still feel incomplete. You chase meaning, but all it brings is exhaustion. Then comes the insight, often sparked by burnout, loss, or deep reflection. None of this is you. This realization can feel euphoric for a moment, like waking up from a dream. You feel clarity, peace, even joy. But what happens next is rarely talked about. After the rush fades, you're left with emptiness. Not the spiritual kind, the psychological kind. The kind that makes you sit on your bed staring into space, thinking, if none of that was real, then what is? This isn't a glitch, it's a design feature. According to Jung, when the unconscious becomes conscious, when the ego sees its own illusions, the psyche enters a kind of liminal space, a psychological cocoon. This space isn't meant for doing, it's meant for dissolving. But our culture doesn't understand this. In a hyper-productive society, stillness is pathologized. We call it laziness. We call it burnout. We call it depression. But sometimes what we're experiencing isn't a disorder. It's a psychological pause, a necessary breakdown of the old identity to make space for the new. Let's break down the mechanics of motivation. For most of our lives, we're driven by psychological strategies built around survival and approval. We want to be loved, seen, accepted, safe, and so, unconsciously, we develop coping strategies. Achieve more, be perfect, help everyone, stay invisible, stand out. These become our egoic engines. And for a while, they work. You get grades, praise, jobs, compliments. You feel like you're getting somewhere. But over time, if you begin to see through those strategies, if you awaken to the deeper layers of your psyche, those strategies lose their power. You stop reacting to the same rewards. You stop fearing the same threats. You outgrow the very systems that gave your life urgency. This is where the spark fades. Not because you're broken, but because your original motivation source, the ego's fear and craving, is no longer compelling. Jung saw this coming. He wrote that the unconscious doesn't care about success or stability. It cares about wholeness. And if your outer life is no longer aligned with your inner truth, your psyche will shut it down. Quietly, methodically, and relentlessly. You won't be able to force your old self to function. The mask no longer fits. Here's another thing no one warns you about. Awakening isn't just about insight. It's about disintegration. After the persona begins to dissolve, your entire internal structure collapses. What used to give your life meaning, goals, relationships, plans, even time itself, starts to lose form. You're not just confused about what to do. You're confused about why anything should be done at all. This is where many people spiral. They think they've lost themselves. They think something's wrong. But Jung would say, nothing is wrong. Something is emerging. What you're experiencing is a phase called enantiodromia. It's a Greek term Jung used to describe the tendency of things to turn into their opposites. In psychological terms, it means your psyche is swinging from one extreme to another, from ego-driven striving to soul-level stillness, from needing answers to tolerating mystery, from doing to being. This swing is sacred. It's how your inner world restores balance. You can't go from a lifetime of egoic programming to soul-aligned living without a phase of confusion and recalibration. The problem is, most people don't recognize this phase for what it is. They panic. They try to get back to their old self. But the truth is, there's no going back. That self is gone. What's ahead hasn't fully arrived. You're in between, and that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Let's make one thing clear. Your ego doesn't die. It evolves. But before it evolves, it collapses. And that collapse feels like death. Everything you identified with, your ambitions, your routines, your beliefs, starts to feel distant, irrelevant, even absurd. This is the death of meaning, but it's not nihilism. It's the compost stage, the breakdown that precedes rebirth. This stage can look like apathy. It can look like chronic fatigue, zoning out, or withdrawing from social circles. But under the surface, your psyche is doing deep work. It's stripping away everything that's not aligned with your emerging self. And until that new self takes form, your system won't let you move forward. Think of it like this. Your old motivation system was a GPS programmed by someone else. Culture, family, survival. You're no longer on that route, but your new GPS hasn't kicked in yet. You're just floating, lost, still. And the stillness isn't optional. It's not a detour. It's the initiation, the necessary blank page. And if you can stop judging it, if you can trust it, you'll begin to see what Jung called individuation begin to unfold. So, if you're feeling unmotivated, foggy, disoriented, congratulations, you're not failing. You're transitioning. What's really happening is this. Your psyche is releasing everything that isn't authentically you, and that process takes time. It can't be rushed, and it definitely can't be forced. In the next section, we'll explore how this fog starts to lift, how the self, not the ego, begins to speak, how motivation returns, but in a new form, not hustle, but alignment, not proving, but expressing, not urgency, but inner resonance. This next chapter isn't about going back. It's about creating a new center, a deeper center, one that's been waiting your whole life to emerge. If this spoke to you, if you saw yourself in these words, I want you to know something important. You're not alone. This phase, This in-between is not your fault. It's part of a deeper psychological transformation, and the fact that you're here, reading this, means you're already walking that path with more awareness than most ever find. At Severa, we explore these psychological transitions, the real, raw, human moments, without sugarcoating, without bypassing, because awakening isn't the end of your story. It's where your real story begins. If this helped you name something you've been silently carrying, consider subscribing to Severa and becoming part of this community. Drop a comment below, not just for us, but for others who may be silently walking the same path. You're not broken, you're becoming.